Hello, FRGH Racing here with the final installation of What the F equals MA. And so I'm just going to go right into it. So what this will be about is turning around the game as we know it and the things that we have to do now to make that happen. So you might notice I haven't really posted this video for almost going on a month, and that's for some key reasons because there has been a lot of updates that have been addressing community feedback and RoboPass, as well as some other things that were updated during all of these small updates. And now we have 8v8. So that's very important that this is going to be a feedback to 8v8 in addition to everything else I'm going to be talking about. So first, let's go over some key points and also consider watching the first two installations, particularly number 2, where I talk about some of the problems that we've had in all instances of RoboCraft balance. And I will agree that that they have addressed some of the problems I've actually brought up in the second installation and first one. And I think that's really good to see, but I don't think that the problems were fixed to the extent that they really need to, even though that same those problems were addressed. So what I'm talking about, what was rolled out into the Easter content RoboPass update, and what was snuck into here was some updates that I was talking about before, some aspects of many balance changes that need to happen. They did address a lot of things, and the problem is there's some blatant problems that still exist. So for example, some things that I do actually agree with is the light, heavy, and basically all the cube tiers and classes have been normalized so that they can be used in all tiers. So it removed the vertical progression of using building cubes, and I think that's fine because the cube system should not be vertical. When you use a light, a medium, or a heavy cube, or even TX, you have to have a direct trade-off, and the capability should be ranked to robot ranking, not the tier of a part. And the tier of a part should be directly linked to the sum of your robot ranking. We'll get into that later, but I think that's a good move to do that. The point is what they changed is that this update and the one before it, when you went to T4, it was easier to get like a T5 gun into T4, and basically over-tiering was a problem. And you had bots that had guns that were too good for the bots that are in lower robot ranking and tier matches. I thought that was a good update too. And it's very important that it's addressed in the same way when we talk about future things pertaining to this. Now this is where it becomes an absolute mess. I talked about the really lazy balancing across all the parts. And what is at least nice is that they fixed the parts that just had they're like the same kind of part, and they just had completely ridiculous balancing. But here's a problem, is when they did these numbers, it's like they put them in a list, but I don't think they actually thought about how they relate to each other. So for example, a strut has the same CPU and volume, so its volumetric effectiveness and its size to what it does is exactly the same as if you were to have that many cubes there. So if we were to look at this one, you can see that you could place 9 cubes and that this should have the same effective balance of one of these cubes. Say it's a medium cube because it's 10 kilograms, or one of these medium cubes is 10 kilograms per CPU. That makes sense. So if you had 9 of these, you had 90 kilograms. You would have this. But this is where it goes wrong. The health of it is, as you can see here, was set to 1856 health per CPU. So if you look at a medium cube, this is only 1500 health per CPU. So as you get struts that are more, you have more CPU per part, you also have more health per CPU. Now, I think this is ridiculous because you have a situation where you now have a part that's more mass efficient for its health. And if you're going to have mass equals MA, then the part's effective health should be somewhat of a metric of it. Now, don't get me wrong, I do agree that struts have a situation where because you have one part that if it gets destroyed, you lose a lot of mounting points and you lose a lot of health at one given time. But I don't think that merits it actually having to have more health per CPU. Well, this extends further to the electro shields, where they're only 1 kilogram per CPU. As can be seen, they're only 1 kilogram per CPU, but their health is off the charts now. They're 2,000 health per CPU for an electro shield. So again, you have something that is drastically more efficient. And then if you want to look at the robot ranking, the robot ranking is really high for electro shields. So what that does is if you're using this in high tier, then it puts your robot ranking in a situation where, let's just look at tier 5, and you have all the parts that you have on your bot. You have like millions of robot rank, and the balance of these two parts are extremely close. They only differ in CPU, but the robot ranking is drastically different. How does this make any sense, and where did anyone tell us this? What this is telling you is that these parts down here are going to push up your robot ranking in the higher tiers, but for the same effective capability, if you just layer your bot with these, your robot ranking won't go up that high, and you can go into lower tiers with the same effective health and mass efficiency for a lower robot ranking. Again, that makes zero sense, and I think that they definitely need to work on how they do this system, because if you go around the whole board here, it's like they took CPU and did a multiple of 10 to some exponential, so by 1,000, by 100, by 10,000. And honestly, extremely lazy yet again, because what robot ranking does, I'm going to summarize, is it normalizes that part's effectiveness to the bot when you add more of it. So for example, and it also, okay, so it does that and then it decouples it from CPU. So if we were to just balance everything to CPU, you have a situation where a part that, like say a wheel versus like some health cubes like struts, you're saying that like a wheel, you need to have like 4 or 5 wheels there, but a strut, if you lose like that same amount of struts, the robot ranking of the wheel and the robot ranking of the strut would be different, because how important it is to have that redundancy is how that bot performs overall. So another example is like hovers. Hovers used to have a situation where you could like tie them in and put them inside your bot really compactly, and they could be balanced with like speed and other things and acceleration, or they ignore carry mass, but then its effectiveness and it appearing to be OP could be offset with the system of robot ranking, and that robot ranking is that robot's effectiveness. And why this matters is that the system that I'm going to be proposing is going to be based off of a few ranking systems that we have now, particularly robot ranking as it stands now. I think it's a great system, and that we need to balance parts, being more mindful of how this system works and not having this extremely lazy appearance on, how the system works. It's like they're not in touch with, they say it's a tier, but then you look at electroplates and you're like, oh, I could just spam my bot with this this small electric plate and get tons of efficiency in my health and mass to CPU, and then not take a hit on robot ranking. Same thing for struts. No, they're actually very consistent with this. They're all multiplied by 100. This actually makes sense, even though you have a 9 CPU strut versus a 27 CPU strut. Of course, with different volumetric efficiencies, but that's what CPU has always been tied to in some shape or form. Again, and then when you compare this to these other cubes, you know, we have the medium cubes, you have heavy cubes, we have TX cubes and light cubes. If you look at the robot ranking and their effectiveness, all these other cubes, like the normal per se cubes, like light, medium, and heavy, look at the robot, it's just one. But having the privilege of using compact cubes is going to shove up your robot ranking so that if anyone were to try to use these parts, even though a noob would have access to this now because of the update, they will look at the robot ranking and realize, wow, by just putting a few things of these on my bot, my tier goes through the roof. So let's actually just see how fast tiers climb. I'm already in tier 3 by just placing one of these, and by placing 4 of these I'm in tier 4, and as this climbs even higher, you can literally see the bar moving, and by not even having a proper body, I'm already in tier 5. So what this is saying is that robot ranking value, by just having that X amount of cubes, you are now saying that this bot is T5 capable without even having a gun on it, and the tier of the part is available to noobs as well. When they start the game and they unlock these with however many points they get, oh yeah, these are all tier 1, so this tier 5 part is going to shove them up into T5. So why does this cube have to be T5? Like, why don't we have the privilege of having compact capability in lower tiers? I don't think that makes sense when you have a building game. It makes sense for guns and performance parts, but it does not make sense for building components in my eyes. So then let's kind of continue further with the whole, how these parts need to be balanced. So I recently did an experiment where I measured the acceleration values to mass for all the wheels, and I mentioned this in the video, one of my previous videos and installations. I also did it for the assault helicopter, and to put it, have it very basic, is that F equals ma is not F equals ma. What it is it's modified carry mass. So as you can see, you have an optimum carry mass, and I can tell you that value is wrong. And the only thing that carry mass determines for some of these parts is your vertical speed, not vertical acceleration or translating acceleration. F equals ma should and always be acceleration, not a speed limit or a cutoff after a mass value. So whatever you want to call this system now, it's not F equals ma. That needs to be fixed. The cutoff for the assault rotor is around 18,000 kilograms. If you subtract about 1,000 kilograms from that and then you go over that point, you'll see the drastic performance cut to where you can no longer move anymore. And then for the wheel bots, you will see no change in acceleration as your orders of magnitude as you go up in mass. And that ties into the next thing. What needs to be fixed is, while you're doing the F equals ma thing for all the parts, we need to go away from this logarithmic relationship of cubes mass compared to one another. So for example, this is 10 kilograms, this is 100 kilograms, this is 1 kilogram per CPU. And these are all one CPU, so per CPU this is 0.3. This is the lightest of them. And we're also saying that you have to have X amount of health per CPU or per mass now, because when you look at these parts, now what you're trading for capability and health for mass is how that will interact on a bot. It offsets the effectiveness of this part onto the performance of another part. So when looking at this, the robot ranking doesn't determine it, and if you look at this at face value, everyone should always be using heavy cubes if all parts ignore mass. However, a lot of parts ignore mass until a singular point, such as when you go over, like, let's look at hovers. If you go over this optimum carry mass of 1,500, let's say you have more than that per one part, it starts getting unstable, and then it will start to not perform normally. But again, that's a stepwise relationship. That's not F equals MA. So the carry mass system needs to be shut down. I'm getting tired of it. It's been here for over, well, basically since the end of 2016. So that's with the whole part system. And finally, to summarize the whole part system, robot ranking needs to be fixed. The health per CPU values need to make sense when comparing them to similar parts. And finally, the mass system needs to be thought out again too, because some of these don't make any sense. Like, these also have more health per CPU and yet are less mass dense. And if you look at something else, if you look at something like this, you have the effectiveness of 1500 health per CPU, which is like a medium cube, but with the mass of a TX cube. And the volume of this is, again, not only can you take this rod and replace it with, it's basically a more efficient medium cube, but you can also do what's called rod wrapping. And so a little lesson in that is basically, if you take any of these sloped cubes, this hitbox now can overtake the hitbox of this, and you've now have effectively two cubes in one cube section. That's called rod wrapping, and this offsets the balance of a rod because of this very nature. Things that the devs need to be aware of, things that cause balance changes, and honestly, if you're not aware of it, these are things that make imbalance happen, which is part placement issues. Okay, so now we've talked about parts, we need to talk about matchmaking. Now, if you look around here, you're like gonna be bombarded with numbers as you start going around. You have your level, you have whatever this ranking is, then you have your tier, which isn't shown in this section anymore. The only thing that you know is that you are in tier 5 because of this, and then you don't know your robot ranking because we have whatever rank this is, which is not this rank. Mind you that these are different, because this is your weapon rank, your name, level, and rank. So this is some other rank that you get from doing good in matches. And then you have your robot ranking. So then we go into here, which they don't display to you, but it determines your tier, is robot ranking. And so what the devs have effectively done is, let's ignore robot ranking and show the players your rank as a player and your weapon rank as your performance items that do things in the game. Let's ignore the metrics that actually are a summation of that robot as a whole. The reason why they don't use robot ranking is honestly very lazy balancing of it. And what they've done is effectively made it so that it works just good enough to determine a tier 4 bot versus a tier 5 bot. And the way they've done this is to make guns drastic, like the way that robot ranking has always worked is that it's more exponential as you go up in tier. So if you look at these guns, the robot ranking is like already 2 million. But honestly, what's the cutoff for tier 4? I think we were almost there when we looked at this. The cutoff for tier 4 going into it is like 90,000, it seems. And then when you go below that, it's somewhere below 90,000 slightly. And then you can see the cutoff for T5 is around, it's like probably 850,000, or it's like somewhere there. It's really close. But the point is look at that exponential increase from tier 3. This is from 90,000 to 800 and something thousand to, looks to be right around 6,000. So notice this, it's probably 9,000 even. If I put one more, yeah, it's somewhere there. But the point is, 6,000, 90,000, 800,000. Honestly, all those relationships are exponential for robot ranking. So now that we've talked about all the different rankings that you have, how does this play into matchmaking? Well, if you were to ignore how the weapon rank system, which changes your gun's capability as that goes up, you have a situation now where robot ranking is effectively ignored. It just sets your tier, and then that tier is your starting point in the matchmaker. So then let's think about this. You have robot ranking, which tells you your tier. You have 5 tiers to work from, and then you have X amount of ranks to further balance players that are high rank and low rank. The final thing that is here in place is weapon rank. I hate this system, and it needs to go away. You'll see this power and rank system. It's basically damage boost, but it's damage boost for playing. So you effectively play to win, which I guess is fine, but it's play to win and offset your balance to other players. And then somehow you have to add this metric when matchmaking. So the matchmaking has to find someone within your tier, someone that's close to your rank, and then someone that is hopefully close to your weapon rank. And when you think about that in context of the very small group of players that are playing right now and the quality of matchmaking, you tend to have AI in matches that totally blow the system out of the water. Once you have an AI in a match, this ranking system has effectively failed, because the AI should be, you should only fill a match with AI once all checks have failed and there's no players available that satisfy matchmaking, and to tighten up that how the game feels. And then going off of that, the weapons rank system does not change robot ranking per weapon rank. So if I were to rank up this shredder right now, the robot ranking would be the same, and that goes for everything else. As you can see here, I'm whatever rank this is. I think there's like 15 ranks or something, or I don't know. I forget. It's something. But the point is this weapon rank keeps going up and down, and you have to keep winning to effectively have your weapon rank in place. But while you're doing this, the power doesn't get, like, you can only go up in power, but you can't go down in power. So once you max out the power of your gun, now you've created a situation where all the players will eventually max out their guns, and then it's just going to be the same imbalance problem. Now you're just throwing this extra thing into the mix where you can't balance a weapon's capability with the match you're in. So I remember when I stopped playing for like a week or a week and a half after the weapon upgrade system, and I honestly didn't have anything ranked up, but I was going over against the same people that have ranked up, and now suddenly I'm getting wrecked. And then finally I played enough matches to now, as the same player and as the same experience, I've been playing the game for a little over 4 years. Now I'm finally ranked up all my power, and now I can play the game normally again. So we've added this unneeded power system to rank up your guns. I understand that it's a system that it entices players to try different weapons, but I think instead of actually effectively changing the balance of a part to give you a reward, I think the reward should be something that is not cosmetic credits or something. It should be like a battle pack or some kind of like free, not free premium, but like maybe you get this color for X amount of uses. You know, something that's not like gonna like dip into the pockets of getting, you know, money for like the non-free to play stuff, but also something that gets people playing and is beneficial to using other things. That's just a shot in the dark, but the point is the power system, ranking up power and changing the capability of a gun per rank is the worst system I've ever seen. It doesn't work, and it's a finite system. Once everyone's ranked up, they're done. Okay, now everything's back to normal. It's the same BS. And then also it segregates the community for any of the time that players that don't play for a while, even though their skill level and their building might be fine, it segregates those players that have to rank up, and then once they have, now they are privileged enough to be able to also wreck other noobs. So, to be perfectly honest, that doesn't work. That system is really bad, because when the matchmaker fails to satisfy it, which it does consistently fails at this. I played a game where every single one on the other team during the 5v5 was an AI player. That's ridiculous. That means that the ranking system has effectively failed 5 times in a row, and then it's trying to say that our weapon ranks are somehow going to have some metric towards matching with someone else. Okay, so now that that's been gone out of the way, the final thing that goes into this, and when I'm talking about how matchmaking should work, we need to get this idea that playing with parties in a team-based game, or platoons as they're called, is an inherently bad thing, an imbalanced thing. I see it time and time again. People are complaining about going up against parties or people that like to play with each other. Well, here's the sad news for you, I guess you can say, is that that's kind of how a team game works. So if we looked at Twitter, we had a question where should we reduce party sizes? Absolutely not. And alternatively, you increase team sizes, which was fantastic. Now we are trying 8v8, and I think 8v8 is imperative that we keep it. It is going to be fantastic only if you do these things that I'm about to talk about. So, what parties effectively do is they bring people together of some, usually a normalized skill level, and then you have a communication system through them playing each other. What needs to be done is that a party rank needs to be instilled. We used to have this in 2014 and 2015 in platoons when we ranked them. With robot ranking, there was some weird algorithm that multiplied your effective rank based on how many people were in the platoon. Fantastic system. We need to bring that back. It didn't work fully back then, and it won't work fully now. And that time and time again, I see situations where you'll have the other team have both a full party and then solo players that are also from the same clan or are very highly experienced players, and then on the other team there's players that are just all solo or AI. And it's happening a lot over this weekend. So there's something drastically wrong with the matchmaking algorithm, unless we do the other things I'm about to mention. So now we need to talk about what I'm going to be proposing as persistent lobbies. And so I have some footage here of Battlefield 1, which uses what I would define as a persistent lobby matchmaking system. What this allows is up to 30 plus players per team to be matched together at any given time. And also, when you finish a match, you don't have to go through your freaking loading screens, your reward screens. And for all the ranking screens, you have to get your rank for your weapon rank, and then you get your level rank, and then you get your player rank, and you have to watch all the stupid bars go up and down and move around till you can even queue up for the next match. In Battlefield, is all you need to do is finish the match and wait 17 seconds for the next match to start. And that's just playing the game. When you add all these loading screens to the game, you're spending more time loading and less time playing. A huge part of player retention is how much you can keep a player engaged. And I can tell you through, even when I'm playing with my group of friends on ROBOCRAFT, it is extremely obnoxious to the point where if I have to go through every loading screen, I will Alt-Tab and do something else while the game is loading. And then finally, we've all loaded in, and then we can queue. Again, even though nobody wanted to build, nobody wanted to go do something else, we all just want to keep playing the game. So, persistent lobbies allow a few other things as well. So, it adds a feedback loop to this balance system. So remember the rules. You have your tier, you have your ranking, you have your weapon rank. Now let's imagine those ranking systems without the power system, which is horrible. Do not continue to use the power system. But if you have these rankings, what can happen over time is that players can be shuffled within the same match that choose to stay and normalize the deviation between the player ranks of various types. So if a player just wants to play, they can continue to do so, load into the next match. They might be on a different team, they might not be. If they're in a party, there might be a suggested system to allow a party member to be broken up. So let's say you have a party that you want to play with, but you're okay with in the next match ending up on the other team to play against your party. Now, that could be debatably not a good idea with the whole Discord voice system being a realistic thing, but to be perfectly honest, it happens anyway. Time and time again, I play with people on Discord that we see someone on the other team will drop into their voice chat and be like, "Hi, y'all about to get wrecked," and just have some banter. But at the end of the day, that's not going to be a problem. That's not going to make and break that suggestion. Okay, so let's have a review of this. You have persistent lobbies, and you have a self-balancing ranking system that will normalize over time. The problem now is that not only the loading screen is obnoxious, but every time you come back to queue into a match, you hit the reset button on those ranking qualifiers. And when you go into the queue, you're finding a brand new match every single time from the point you join it. And from the point you join it, you're either doing another fresh room or or creating your own lobby per se. And then it has to get filled with either AI or something else. What in theory should happen with persistent lobbies is that as players do not leave to go build and as they continue to stay, you have a situation where the room is so filled that you only have to fill it with 2, 3, or 4 people after the matches end. And with match times ranging from 5 to 10 minutes, that's a short time frame for these matches to have a fresh availability and only needing to fill 4 people. Also, filling those spots give you less of a range, because in theory the rest of the players already in the lobby have already been normalized, and then these 4 fresh players, their deviation in rankings can be managed and distributed much easier than totally starting from scratch every single time. So that's persistent lobbies in a nutshell. So to summarize this whole thing is we have to fix the whole relative cube balance system. It's a mess, and we need to take robot ranking a little bit more seriously, as opposed to, kind of just throwing numbers around, multiplying CPU by X amount, and then finally fixing the relative mass values for these parts in context of mass equals MA. So mass equals MA needs to actually be what it's called. It's not. It's not F equals MA. It's carry mass modified. And this can be seen in one of the last updates. They refer to agility as spin up time. And that's very different from acceleration. So what spin up time has always been is not a force that results in acceleration due to mass. It is a change in force over time. So, and that's the thing, is that there's to call the forces from most of the movements actual forces is not really the right way to call it, because a lot of the parts are what's called comm assisted. A lot of the forces act on the center of mass and add stabilizing and turning and torques and translating forces to the center of mass, but they do this based on a system in Unity that doesn't say this is the, it's not like an inverse kinematics, or it's not like kinematics in general. It's not like, hey, I add this force, it evaluates the mass and accelerates. What it does is it's telling to follow a velocity curve for the game object, which is what a robot would be in ROBOCRAFT. It's built in Unity. So if you have this game object, it's scripted to move a certain way. It's told that over this amount of time you increase by this speed. And what they've done is the movement is scripted to follow these rules, as opposed to actually following F equals ma. Now the thing is, these velocity curves are based on carry mass, not a linear relationship to how mass grows. So for example, if I have this 90, almost 100,000 kilogram bot, and I have another wheel bot that is 60,000, this is, generally the same, way less mass, same size, same parts. I can already tell you they accelerate and perform from a driving standpoint pretty much the same. And then at that, you have a situation where I start to add skis to all my wheels, and they add an amazing torque. They propel themselves now. So they do a lot of wonderful things. Because, at the end of the day, you could do whatever to the skis, and they're still going to be bad, to be perfectly honest. So you might see in some of my, it doesn't really work in test mode too well, but during matches, you can see drastic boosts in using the skis versus the wheels. Okay, and then finally, the 8v8 system is fantastic, but with the increase in team sizes, you have many things that are a direct result of this that I feel like that they ignored again because they're just testing it. Matches are significantly faster now. We went from 10-minute BA matches to now we're down to like 4 to 5 minutes, just because of the raw scoring potential. You have that 60% increase in player count, counting towards more score over time. And then also the map sizes, I believe if I remember correctly, was around an 80% volume reduction while keeping bot sizes the same, that needs to be reverted, because not only were the maps reduced because of the 5v5, but maps were reduced because of, well, let's be honest, Sergi's kind of game design of, let's make this like Overwatch, let's have this fast-paced and close combat. Well, with a game that has flying and little copters and things that can go really fast on the ground versus the sky, having close combat is like fish in a barrel when it comes to this type of game. So we need to increase map sizes. You need to increase map complexity. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember, but we had a few maps that had actual caves, and these were huge aspects of the game. 8v8 is great, but having them in that small package is just not alright. It's not good. So a summary of this is fix relative part balancing. You can do all the community feedback all you want, but robot ranking, mass, and health, and all these things are just, from a relative point of view, don't make sense. The next thing is the ranking systems. These are all ridiculous. You have levels, player level, you have your weapon rank, you have your weapon power, it's already confusing to talk about. But the point is, that's just too much. It's too much going on, doesn't make sense. Go towards robot ranking, have a weapon rank, not a weapon power, not weapon power. Weapon power needs to go away, and then maybe player rank. To be perfectly honest, I don't think player rank really does much of anything other than something for the leaderboards. But it's still a finite number. It's not something dynamic. It can't really change over time. You will always, regardless, approach Protonium League. But once you reach there, now you have a situation where you can go up and down in rank. Again, a stupid system. Doesn't make any sense, and honestly is not how a ranking relative to people system should ever work. When you're trying to rank someone based on some metric versus someone else, it should never have a situation where it can only increase until you reach a certain point. That makes zero sense. If you're a noob and you get stuck in bronze the whole time, well, then you're just going to be stuck in bronze all the time. Also, if you have these drastic numbers, yes, it converges, but okay, yay, I get a huge boost in rank just because I played a bronze match, which is another silly thing, because what this does is it basically gets you out of the low ranks, and then now noobs are going to be inevitably ranked with high level players very quickly. So that needs to be removed. Get that out of here. But have weapon ranking systems that work like this, not like this. So only here, and then they have your rank levels. So then once you have that, you fix the whole rank thing, and that's out of the way. Then F equals MA needs to actually be F equals MA. I have systematically made a game in Unity, showed how it works in Unity, and it has numbers that it follows with velocity and acceleration limiters. These are things that can be done in the game, and I do not want to be told that they can't be done, because I know that they can be, and I know Mark knows that they can be, because he's running all these little experiments things. So I know Mark knows it can happen, and I know it can happen from experience. So if you're more curious on how I think F equals MA needs to work, and I've systematically broken it down, it needs to be power and force. Force equals mass times acceleration. Acceleration per part is a converging system of redundancy. So as you add more of the same movement component or any parts, you are going to converge towards a mass over force ratio, or a force over mass ratio equals acceleration. And then your velocity, your top speed, such as what speed boost does, is going to be your power equals force times velocity. So in other words, that your power and your force will be inversely proportional to the max top speed of your bot. So that means a high power and a low force part will have a very high velocity potential, but it will have a very low acceleration potential. If you add more redundancy of the same parts, it's convergent. It means that if I add 10 of the same part, the power over the force ratio will always result in the same max speed and the same acceleration. So there's no need for diminishing returns, and there's no need for exponential speed boost. Mixing parts becomes an art of mixing these different ratios because, again, they're converging towards the power over force ratio or the force over mass ratio. That's how F equals ma should work in a nutshell. And then we do persistent lobbies, and then we increase map size. So that's how that's how I would fix ROBOCRAFT and all. This has been what the F equals ma, and I really hope that we can get this in front of the devs and make something happen. It's been a little too long, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.